everybody? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. And, well, we've got a few new additions to the roster. And with that, I've brought in, last week we obviously had Nekias Duncan on to talk about the acquisition from the Miami Heat, or free agent acquisition, in Derek Jones Jr. This week, we're talking about Harry Giles III. You got to make sure you get the third in there because there's two others. I don't know. Listen, the number thing never really made sense to me. Anyways, from the Kings Herald, managing editor, all-around good dude, and Sacramento Kings masochist. I think that's the proper. Greg Wissinger. We're gonna make sure hard on the ger because otherwise it's T-I-double-G-R. Right? And that's what I'm gonna go with. A little Winnie the Pooh. Is that the way, the proper way?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to remember it.
Listen, man, we're a pro Winnie the Pooh, pro Tigger podcast. That was my jam growing up. But thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Always happy to come on.
Listen, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna make jokes about the Kings.
So will I.
That's kind of what I figured.
It's kind of my whole thing.
I mean, it is what it is, kind of a situation as far as that goes. And so let's start off with the crappy part of this. Why Harry Giles Jr. was an unrestricted free agent. So for those, let me throw this out there for everybody else who doesn't know. Harry Giles Jr. should have been a restricted free agent next year.
Yeah,
not
even this year.
Remember, him and Zach Collins were drafted in the same draft.
Yeah.
The Kings should have at least one more year and then restricted free agent rights. Instead, a guy who really looked promising before the season shut down is gone for nothing. Literally nothing.
And not just that, but Zach was actually drafted with the 10th pick, which was the Kings, and they traded back and used one of those picks they traded back with to get Harry Giles.
And Justin Jackson.
Yeah.
So why
all of this?
Yes. Why did this all come together?
This is all thanks to the brilliant management of Vlade Divac, who, great Sacramento Kings player, horrible Sacramento Kings GM, and no longer with the franchise. Last summer, Harry Giles, according to the team, maybe didn't come back to camp in the best shape, or the shape they wanted him to be in. And that was when they had the opportunity to pick up his fourth-year option, which is a no-brainer for anyone who is able to play productive minutes on a basketball court.
A pulse.
Yeah, basically. To teach Harry a lesson was Divac's thinking. They didn't pick up the option, and it's unclear whether or not he knew it at the time, but it's probably a fair bet that Divac did not realize at the time the full ramifications of what it would do. That not only would it make Harry Giles an unrestricted free agent, it would also hamstring the Kings in their ability to pay him anything more than like $3.9 million in their base, like first year salary of a new contract. Like, it basically made it impossible for him to stay with the team if there was any interest whatsoever in him in the market.
So,
and
for those keeping track at home,
it's probably also not even like top 5 of Divac's worst decisions during his time with the Kings. Just to put it all in context.
Good God. Okay. So what I'm thinking is we'll start off with basically all of the awful to get things going, and then we'll build to the fluffier, friendlier, nicer stuff in the middle and the end. This is your superhero backstory. Stupidity by an organization. Giles maybe not making the best choice in the summer after having some ups and downs with the Kings, mostly due to injuries. And let's kind of get into that here. There have been, at least I've heard, that there have been a couple different situations about the handling of his injuries and whether he's been ready, whether or not he's been ready, what the injury actually was. It's kind of gone on for a couple years. What's kind of been your take as far as how the Kings handled him in that regard?
Sure. And I mean, the short version of it is that they definitely handled him with kid gloves from the get-go. Now, the longer version is that Harry Giles was once the number 1 high school basketball prospect in the country.
Mm-hmm.
He was highly regarded, and you watch his high school tapes and it just jumps off the page. And obviously it's high school, but you can still see what made him special. He then had 2 different knee injuries on the same knee. He went to Duke and played a handful of games, but not much. And realistically, he shouldn't have even played that year at Duke if he was truly rehabbing. But the idea was to show enough that he was recovered to try to get drafted.
Mhm.
So Kings drafted him at 20th, knowing that he had this injury history. And this was also part of what made Vlade's decision not to pick up that 4th-year option so crazy, is that the Kings essentially redshirted him what would have been his rookie year. They didn't let him play at all. They had him play in practice. They had him work in rehab. They had him work with trainers and really build up his lower body strength and, just kind of make sure that everything was on track to where he'd be good. And he had some setbacks and some other injuries. And, some of that, may have just been how badly the Kings seasons were going, some of it, and playing it cautious. Some of it may have been other things, but they definitely were very careful with him. Any little thing they didn't have him push through, they took it slow. And so because of that, there were times when he missed some time, but there was also nothing that screamed like, okay, this guy's never going to be able to stay on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's concerns and there's risks and there's things you're watching, but a lot of it was because they were being so cautious. And so essentially they let him go after 2 years of on-court play. I mean, it was such a small window of time to actually see what he could do. And that just kind of compounded how insane that decision was.
Because most 22-year-olds are done developing.
Years.
Yeah. Especially after a redshirt year.
Yeah.
I mean, the Nuggets really should just let Michael Porter Jr. go right now.
Right.
That's really what should be happening, if we're being honest. Okay, so we've got ineptitude, we've got basically a redshirt year, and then you've got these flashes from Giles. And just to kind of touch on the injury stuff, he's a different athlete now than he was pre-injury. But
absolutely.
But there's a big but there. He's still a baby deer at that size. He still moves and glides like guys 6'10" shouldn't be able to do. Like, when you watch him, you still put him up there in that upper echelon for guys that size, yes?
Yeah, I mean, if you knew nothing of his backstory and just saw him running around a basketball court, you'd never know that this was a guy with multiple serious knee injuries. He does not move like a guy with major knee trouble.
No. And this is what I think a lot of people, especially in Portland, dear God, we hear knee surgery in Portland, and we're like, oh, Jesus Christ, are you kidding me? Like, no, another big guy knees? No. Okay. He's picked up some knocks and some little things here or there, but there haven't been knee issues that have keep coming back, right?
Yeah, no major knee issues, no major setbacks. I mean, he's had times when he sat with swelling in the knee, and again, they've been extremely cautious. They have not had him in a position where they tried to push him through any sort of knee discomfort or knee pain, just given his history. They were very cautious. Now, whether or not he could have gone or would have gone, I mean, that
you're splitting hairs.
Right, exactly. It's just they were very careful with him. But in general, he has not had any serious knee issues that really shut him down to the point where you're like, okay, here we go again.
All right, so let's kind of roll things back a little bit. Let's talk about Harry Giles, the player. When we're talking about Harry Giles, I think a lot of guys assume that he's just this what used to be explosive rim runner, and that's kind of the limit of his game. Which, if let's put him on par with somebody else that had the same kind of profile that went high, like a Nerlens Noel. Because I think that's what people think he is, which in reality I think he's something drastically different. When you look at him, what is, if you had to summarize him and talk about his game, what are the things that you want to drive home when you talk about Harry Giles?
The thing that I think Blazers fans are going to fall in love with the most isn't anything to do with his scoring. His passing is unreal. I mean, he's and this is going to sound extreme, but I sincerely mean it's like poor man's Nikola Jokic as far as the passing goes.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're being extreme. For everybody who thinks I don't. I think he's one of the premier. If I had to knock him down, the poor man's Jokic, I'd put him on par with Sabonis as a playmaker.
Yeah, I mean, just the passing, the vision, the anticipation. I mean, he is so fluid with the ball in his hands as far as finding guys, finding cutters. It's something I felt like the Kings should have always utilized more. And it's incredible. I mean, when he gets the opportunity to operate out of the high post, I mean, he can find guys. And he also has those other scoring skills. Like he can hit, a 10, 15-foot jumper. He can take a guy off a dribble to where, the passing is just an element of what he can do there, but it's incredible when he starts moving the ball around.
So for anybody listening, there'll be another piece coming alongside this. It's another video piece that's going to break down exactly a lot of stuff that we're talking about right here. And as I was sitting here watching the tape on Giles, what jumped out to me is, number one, how stupidly effective he is at the elbows, both as a playmaker, facilitator, a guy in a DHO who makes the right read, whether to tuck it or whether to hand it off, or if he's extended a little bit further, put it on the floor twice and get to the rim and finish. Again, when we talk about his athleticism, it's not just his leaping ability. He has strides like Kevin Durant. He's 6'10". Like he closes distance offensively, and I don't think there's a lot of guys that big in the league, especially like, quote unquote centers, who can put the ball on the floor and not scare the crap out of you as a coach. Like I think that's a real thing. Like he puts the ball down and you're not like, oh God, please no. It's, oh yeah, no, he's gonna finish at the rim because he kind of glides. And I see, and this is more of a reference for Blazers fans, I see he moves more like Nic Batum at 6'10". Like he just kind of glides and gets to his spots, and then he wants to finish with power. But the thing that I noticed over and over and over again, willing cutters are rewarded with this guy. If you run split cuts, if you run back cuts, if you run off down screens, not only does, and this is the thing, I think there's a lot of guys in the league who can see the pass. It's to make the pass at the right time in the right spot. He throws touch passes, two-handed touch passes over the top to Buddy more times than I can count. He finds Harrison Barnes with bounce passes in traffic. God knows how many times. He finds, I think it was Bogey a couple different times over the top with these little lead passes like a quarterback, throwing back shoulder fades. And it's like, those are pinpoint passes over tall defenders, quick defenders, guys who jump in passing lanes, guys who were playing soft on him and, basically forcing him to shoot. And he still finds those angles and he still finds those pockets. Why do you think that, other than health, why do you think the Kings didn't really maximize that?
I really wish I knew. I mean, I will say that if we're talking about all the positives with Giles, we also have to
we'll get into the negatives too. That's for sure.
And I think that is kind of a transition into why he probably didn't see the court as much as he maybe should have. That, after his redshirt year, it was Dave Yeager for his true rookie year. Mm-hmm. And then that switched to Luke Walton for last season. And I think both of them had the same gripe with him, and that's on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. Under Yeager, it was an issue with foul trouble, where Harry was a defender who would, attack his man and play aggressive defense, but he never figured out how to do it without fouling. So his foul rate was just through the roof.
That should sound familiar to Blazers fans.
Well, and it's a common issue with young big men, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's something you have to grow. Like,
especially if you're an impressive defender.
Yes, I can't think of a young big that's come in the league and not just racked up fouls.
And then last year, Harry's solution to that seemed to be that, well, if I'm going to get called for a foul, I will not defend them. And he kind of became a matador on defense.
Ole, 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 ole.
Yeah. So his defensive rating numbers are abysmal last season because he just was like, well, if I'm going to get called for a foul and I want to stay on the floor, I can't foul, so I won't contest at the rim. And obviously you got to try to figure out that middle ground. And I think better coaching could probably help him unlock that. But yeah, I think that the defensive end is a big reason why the Kings did not utilize him more for his offensive gifts.
Just because he's given up so much. And then we'll get into his defense a little bit here.
Yeah.
So he's a very bad offensive rebounder. Like non-existent for a guy his size.
Mm-hmm.
In the, I think he's the bottom 10% or 10th percentile. He just, for whatever reason, doesn't make any sense, because if you look at his defensive rebound rate, it's through the roof. This last year, I think he was at like 26%, which that puts you in like the, upper 10, 12%. That's really good. Then I look at his block rate, and it's non-existent.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at his steal rate, and he's back in like the upper quarter again. And you're like, no, this doesn't make sense. This isn't adding up. Like, he gets in passing lanes and he rebounds defensively, but he doesn't really go after the offensive glass, like even at all. And he doesn't challenge shots. So that kind of plays into, I think, what you're talking about with like, I think I'm just not, I'd rather not do that, Bob. I want to stay on the floor and not pick up an over the back foul on an offensive rebound, or challenge a shot and pick up a foul and get taken off the floor. You have to wonder how much Jaeger, maybe browbeat that a little bit to an extent, or the hook was so short with him in that time period that he's just got that burned into his head, which coming to Portland, it's not exactly an endearing sign, because young bigs with foul trouble get short hooks here too. So yeah, about that. But I mean, you have to at least look at him and go, he has the profile to be at least a passable defensive big, yeah?
I absolutely think he could. And, again, the problem his rookie year was he would play really good defense, but he didn't know how to do it without the refs calling a foul. And that's a learned skill. And I think that if he had people to work with, I mean, the other thing you got to remember with Harry is that he essentially missed the majority of his junior and senior year of high school with injuries.
And then didn't really play in college.
Barely played in college. Redshirted a year. So even though, he's at the age he should have some of these things starting to develop, he's still a little behind the curve as far as just the minutes and the reps and the learning and all those different pieces. So I think he could be a passable defender. I think, to your point, he's smart enough. He knows the game. He knows the angles, all those different pieces. I think it's fine tuning on getting him engaged to where he's actually playing defense, first part, and then teaching him how to do it without getting whistled every time.
Okay, so we know about Giles' major plus, which is his playmaking, which is a major, major plus. And when I look at him and the way, and we'll talk about how he gets on the floor here in a minute, but when I look at him, I go, listen, him at the 5, and he's a 5 in your mind, yes?
I think he's better. I think he's better suited to the 5 in the modern game, yes.
Yes, just his ability as that, basically that cog in a 4-out set where he can play up either above the free throw line or above the 3-point line and kind of get things done there. I think that's where he ultimately settles in. But if you have a Robert Covington, at the 4, and you get a Gary Trent Jr. at the 2, and you throw him out there with Derek Jones Jr. and CJ, like that's your kind of cobbled together bench unit where you got some starters, some 6-man kind of guys, where you've got enough defense, but you've got primary ball handlers, you've got cutters, you've got floor spacers, where if you have him in the middle of the floor as a secondary initiator, what it could do for your offense could truly unlock it.
And I totally agree. And I think that kind of what you're describing there, where you have a mixture of, you have some other defenders on the roster who can provide that support. It's not like he ever had that in Sacramento. I mean, Sacramento has not had a plethora of elite defenders at really any position. I mean,
Ariza was legitimately your best defender, and he came to Portland. Well, then, not that he cared when he was down there, but
right. No, I mean, if he had been playing defense,
because he came to Portland and played defense.
Yeah, I mean, like their best defensive player really last season was probably Corey Joseph. Yeah. I mean that
he tries hard. He just doesn't have. He doesn't have the profile to like really do anything outside of affecting passing lanes and point guards, though.
Right. I mean, like he's good at a role.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Kings just don't have a lot of good defenders. After that, it's probably Harrison Barnes, and that's not a lockdown defender. That's
he's a team defender.
Yeah, exactly. And
there's nobody bailing him out, basically.
Exactly. It's, guards are playing Ole defense to funnel it into Giles, who's also playing Ole defense, and it's just not going to work out well.
It's like a pinball table where you're just holding everything up at once. Let's see what happens. Let it bounce. All right. the one thing I know a lot of people question when it comes to Giles is his shooting or quote-unquote inability to shoot. Why the hell won't he shoot threes?
I don't know that he was ever asked to. I really think that's most of it. I mean,
so the guy that shot basically like 47% from mid-range for his mildly short career, but looks competent and is like a plus 70% free throw shooter, they're not going to have him just even try a three? Just nothing?
Again, it's the Kings, man.
Because I'm sitting there watching him, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I've seen guys with a whole lot more going on in their jump shot out there taking at least a YOLO three every now and then. Like, you know what? Let me go ahead. Let me heat check this. I'm having a good night, Bob. Nothing? Because when I look at him, again, I'm not saying he needs to take 3 a night. But if you're putting him in DHOs where he's in, or, above the 3-point line, he's the kind of guy where you're just like, yeah, because if you sag off and he's got a little bit of something, like a 33% 3-point shooter, I'm not asking for 36, 37. I'm just asking like passable. You unlock a level to his game that, multifaceted guys like that at that position just don't really exist, no matter how much he gives up on the defensive end. Like, that whole idea is pretty impressive. So it's just something that the Kings were just like, nah, we're good.
Well, I mean, in their defense, the Kings do have a lot of other 3-point shooters. Like, there's a lot of other more proven
There's a
options.
Bielitsa, and you've got Barnes who will go in the corner, and obviously Bogey and
Buddy. And yeah, so I think it was less that.
Yeah, Wong's not really a 5-out guy. He's more a 3-2 than anything
definitely.
else.
and I mean, even Jaeger, I mean, it was.
Yeah,
it
and
was
even he likes pushing four out is tough for him.
Yeah, he's as much as he encouraged a lot of threes in his last year here, it still was not what you see in some places where it's really anyone can be taking a 3 as long as they're hitting them type of deal.
Yeah, which, again, in Portland, if you show you've got any proclivity of hitting that shot, you're allowed to take it. Like, that's...
Like, if you told me that Giles was now taking like a 3 per game and hitting in the mid-30s, it wouldn't shock me a year from now. Like, that wouldn't be surprising in the least, but I just don't know that it's ever been something that has been put on him.
That's just interesting because, it's, again, when you look at a guy who's young, athletic, can put the ball on the floor, is a plus passer, like, clearly the weird thing is, I will say this, God tier finisher at the rim. He's like 80% inside the restricted area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's stupidly high because he finishes with a dunk seemingly every single time. I was sitting there watching the film. I'm like, I'm just watching his interior finishes. I'm like, does he ever finish with a layup? It's the only time he ever lays the ball up is off like a 2 or 3 step drive. Like, he's never under the rim, like on a putback. Like, every one of his putbacks, I swear to God, was a putback dunk. And for a guy who's got knee issues, you're like...
Now, were you just watching his makes or were you watching his misses too?
Both.
Okay, because I just tend to notice he does sometimes do the layups, but I notice he misses more of them. So I think he just goes for the dunk because, that's way easier. I'll just dunk it.
And the thing is, like, even if he's missing those layups, he's still, again, shooting 80% at the rim. And to your point, where I think those misses are coming from, it's in the paint, not at the rim.
Sure.
Because he's really bad there. Yeah, I think he was 31%, 32% in the non-restricted paint. So that in-between game definitely needs some refining. But again, I think he was 48% from mid-range.
Yeah, it's weird. He has that weird gap between the rim and...
Where it just checks out. Like, it's no good.
Yeah, I can't hit anything there.
But again, like I said, I think he took like something like 70, 80 mid-range jumpers this past year. No, I think it was 96 is what it came out to. And I was like, wow, that's to shoot that good. And I think he's taken 6 threes in his entire career.
Yeah.
It's like, this doesn't really add up. Okay, so one thing I keep hearing is Kanter's not guaranteed the backup minutes. And this is going to address somebody's question in here. I'll get to it. I'm sorry. I know your name was one of the ones that was in here was, which will he get on the floor kind of a deal. And here's the thing. The last time Kanter came to Portland, Kanter was guaranteed 20 minutes That's how the buyout market changed. From everything I had heard, he was going to Boston before he came to Portland, which, strangely enough, he ended up in Boston that next season, almost like there was some interest there from both sides. Who knows? But the way that I've been told is that he was guaranteed 20 minutes of playing time before Nurk went down even, which was basically Nurk was going to get 28, Kanter was going to get 20. He ended up getting more, and Kanter played pretty damn well through the playoffs. So happy for both, and obviously there's that weirdness, that free agency when he was or wasn't given so much time to sign and re-sign, and Portland got the Godfather offer from Hood and said, see you later, Kanter. Okay, that's all in the past. Now Kanter is dealt for Boston to make some room. He's basically told he can go to Memphis or Portland. Guess what's not coming with that this time? It's a guarantee of minutes. So, if you're Portland, Mr. Greg, do you opt to roll a dice on a Harry Giles, or do you go with what you know in Enes Kanter?
I think the challenging thing is that I'm coming to it from a very different mindset, where I'm coming from a perpetual trying to build something team, as opposed to a team that is kind of right there and trying to get a step further, right? Because, I mean, Kanter, you know what you're getting, good, bad, and everything else in between. Like, you know how he can help you. You know how he's going to hurt you. It's very easy to game plan for what Kanter is going to do for your team. Harry's a bit more variance, right? I mean, he's going to give you some really good. He's going to give you some really bad. There's a lot more upside. So kind of depends on what you're looking for. I mean, if you're looking for something, consistent production, probably lean a little more towards Kanter. If you're looking for, okay, let's see. I mean, we can always go back to Kanter. If Harry's not working out, I would lean towards Harry, but that's because I'm going to always be a Harry Giles fan, no matter where he's at. But I think that's really going to be the difference between how the coaching staff would go about deciding.
Okay. So when I look at Giles, I see his big plus. This has, like, even before free agency started, I hadn't heard Giles' name, but it was one of those ones that I penciled in. Because every single thing, you just shoot a flare into the sky that explodes into Neil Olshey signing. Because he marks every single thing that Neil Olshey ever looks for in one of these Flyer signings. Number one, has he targeted him before? He legally drafted him. So yes, he's on that. Whether or not that's who Sacramento wanted, that's who Portland wanted, I don't care. He has been attached to Neil Olshey before. Has he had an injury that he's recovered from? Yes, he has. Okay. Does he play for the Sacramento Kings? Yes? Oh, okay, then that's another one. Because basically, if you've played for the Sacramento Kings or the Cleveland Cavaliers, there's a 34% chance increase in you being a Neil Olshey target. And then it was one of those things where, okay, we ticked all those boxes, which makes him like a 98% chance that he's on the Neil Olshey shortlist. What else does he do? Oh, he passes? Who did Portland trade for? Robert Covington. Can't pass. Who did the Blazers sign? Derek Jones Jr. Can't pass. And you're like, let's see. You're going to start Dame CJ Nurk. Good passer. Probably Hood. Maybe Derek Jones Jr., depending on how they view Hood's health, and Robert Covington. And you're like, so Dame and CJ are just going to handle the ball 98% of the time. Right? And then you're like, no, they can't do that. And if you're looking at the second unit, they didn't go out and sign another point guard. And whether or not you want to say CJ is going to be the backup point guard, which he is, they still need somebody to work as a secondary facilitator. And to me, it's a giant neon sign behind Harry Giles. Like, hey, that thing that I do really well, let's use that. Because the Blazers have tried preseason Mario Hezonja last year. Quite a few of us bought into that. Everybody, I think, kind of bought into it because he looked really good. Not just competent, really good. It was like, I could see him being a secondary ball handler as the 8th, 9th guy. Sure. And then that didn't work. But I look at Harry Giles in the same way. Like, I could run my secondary offense through this guy off the bench, right?
Yeah, I don't think that would be crazy. And I'd love to see a team try that for an extended stretch. I'm a big believer in Harry. I have seen what he can do with the ball in his hands. And I mean, we've seen other teams that can do that with big men. Obviously, Denver's the biggest example. Yeah. I mean, Jokic, most of the time, is their point guard. Like, even though he's also their center, like on their offensive set, it runs primarily through him. I think you could do a very similar thing with Giles. And obviously, again, poor man's version, it's not going to be the exact same, but the vision, the passing, it's all there. And like I said, you get cutters, you get guys moving around, he's going to find them. And
you
I think
alleviate
it'd be
some
fun to
pressure
watch.
off CJ McCollum, who led the league in minutes last year. You alleviate the pressure off Damian Lillard, who was second in the league in minutes played per night. Like, Portland is short on primary ball handlers, and I know they believe in Anthony Simons. I do. That's not a shocking revelation here. But if you're talking about playmaking, you have two absolute no-doubters in Dame and CJ. You've got Melo, who can work as a initiator or finisher, and then I think you've got Giles. Honestly, Giles is probably the second or third best passer on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Now, playmaker, I think you can argue that Dame and CJ are firmly ahead of him, but that's not really necessarily a knock on him, because I think CJ really is more of a point guard than anything else. I'm going to steal half of this question here because we've already addressed part of it. This is from Josh Sargent. What's the ceiling / floor on Giles at this point? Like, what's your realistic ceiling, and what's your, hey, I could really see this ceiling?
So, I mean, we've kind of talked about it a little bit already. I mean, I think really the ceiling is going to be based on, can he become solid enough on defense that doesn't limit his minutes, right? That he's not just a total sieve on the defensive end, can provide something there other than 6 fouls. If he can do that,
is valuable.
This is a lot. But yeah, I really think that if you found a way to run like a secondary unit through him, out of the high post, I think that kind of what we've been talking about. I think that's optimizing him. That's getting the most out of his skill set. Now, as far as other skills he could develop, he has a shooting touch. I don't think that there's, a hard ceiling on like where he's at now is what he'll always be as a shooter or a scorer. I think that there's room to grow throughout his game. I mean, I really think that he's got a lot of potential. Now, he is coming from behind the curve. Like, he missed some key development years, and so, he would probably never be, an elite big man in the NBA just for that reason. I mean, just, time is not on his side, injury history is not on his side. But I think he can be a very solid bench player. And, if there's injuries or just if you found a creative way to use him, I don't see any reason why he couldn't be a starting big man in the NBA.
Ooh, I like it. I mean, realistically, when you look at his profile, a rotation, like, no doubt, first big off the bench, shouldn't be an unrealistic thing for him with health.
Not at all. Not at all.
Like, there just aren't many 6'10" dudes who are plus passers who can put the ball on the floor and knock down a mid-range shot. Like, when you start checking those boxes at 6'10", the list gets really short really fast. They just don't exist. Like, as much as I love Jokic isn't putting the ball on the floor and attacking a closeout. If he is, it's very slowly and usually with a jumper over the top of somebody. It's not to get by and finish at the rim. Big Honey isn't, Euro stepping to the rim and finishing with, 2 hands over somebody. I watched Giles do that, and I was like, that's pretty decent. Pulls the ball back of a DHO with both defenders go over the top, and he's just like, cool, 2-step Euro and then 2-handed flush, and it was like, good Lord. Like, that's an elite level skill set at that size. I mean, you don't get guards doing that kind of stuff, let alone a guy at 6'10". So I'm sure you're well aware of this. The flashes of potential with him have been dumb high when he does something when you're just like, I did that multiple times watching his film, both on the offensive end and on the defensive end, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where if he's playing in a game, like for more than just a handful of minutes, like he's going to do at least one thing that like blows you away. Now, it's not every play, and it's not the consistency that it would take to be like an actual star player or anything like that. But like I said, I mean, you can see those glimpses of what he can do. Mm-hmm. It's like, man, if the right team figures out how to unlock this, he's such a fun player to watch.
and I'll say this, like with this whole idea of like, why didn't the Kings do this? I think that's what I'm going to title the podcast. Why didn't the Kings do this? Why the hell didn't they use him as a lob threat more often? Does Fox just not? Is he in the Damian Lillard school of not throwing lobs? Because
no, Fox loves to throw a lob.
That's what I mean. Like, what the hell? Because I sit here and watch him. I watch guys miss him on back cuts over. And well, to be fair, I watched Buddy miss him on back cuts.
You just answered your question.
More times than I could count. I mean, he's got great natural timing. He knows how to. He's not Steven Adams as a screener, but for a guy who's a little skinny down low, he sets a good screen. He's not a chump in that department, and then he knows how to get to space. So it was one of the things I was like, I could see him using it as a lob threat, which I just want Portland to throw lobs. That's really all I want.
And I don't really remember that much under Walton, but I remember especially his first year with Jaeger, they did use him as a screener quite a bit. He would get in some trouble. He had some issues with moving screen.
Sticking the hips out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and, didn't realize why he was getting whistled for that. Kind of going back to what we were talking about before, that, he had a tendency to pick up fouls, and that was another way that he would do that.
God, him and Zach Collins really are on the same path, picking up injuries, not able to stay on the floor, foul trouble, can't set screens without fouling. It's like one of them plays offense, the other one plays defense. If you put them together, you still have a player who you're like, come on, buddy. We're going to go off basketball here real quick. The wonderful ladies at the We Have a Take podcast, shout out Team Mom, Tara Bowen Biggs, and all the ladies over there. What is your favorite non-basketball related fact about Harry Giles?
So I don't know if it's necessarily a fact, but
fact, story, cool thing, whatever.
Yeah, Harry Giles is just like the greatest kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are all going to just love rooting for him. You just, every little story, every little anecdote you hear is just good stuff. So I'll give an easy example. Yesterday, he posted his goodbye to Sacramento and Sacramento Kings fans on social media. They did it as like a 2-part post. So the first part, he thanked the Kings for taking a chance on him, for letting him redshirt, for the training staff, for all the work they did with him. He spent several sentences thanking the arena staff, like the ushers and like the back ops people and like the people who never get mentioned in these goodbyes. Like he knew everyone, he was friendly to everyone, and took care of everyone. Like, no one has a bad thing to say about Harry Giles the person ever. I've yet to run across that. And then the second piece, he was dedicated entirely to the fans and how much they made him feel at home in Sacramento. And just, I mean, like, he's just an amazing kid. And I'll always be a fan of him for that reason. He's just, a bright personality, a good locker room guy. Like, everyone loves Harry.
And for anybody who didn't catch him at the Blazers press conference, I can't remember who asked it. I want to say it was Jason Quick of The Athletic. But there's something about him going to the dentist and like this endearing thing about him wanting to be a dentist growing up, or something along those lines. Anyways, it was
he said that even back in Sacramento, that if he hadn't been an NBA player, he would have probably been a dentist. He
made people smile, or make people's smiles better, something along those lines. Like, it was like, oh, that's just too damn cute. Like, it's just. And the funny thing is I don't necessarily beat the Blazers up over this because I think it's a good thing for the most part, but I also do kind of beat them over the head with it. I want them to get an a-hole. Like, you can't have a team full of nice dudes. But there's something nice about the fact that they go out, like, and I talk to players and people around the league about Giles, about Covington, about Derrick Jones Jr. And every person I talk to, all they can do is talk about how good they are as people. Like, beyond the basketball stuff. They're just wonderful people. They're great. Like, it doesn't matter who you talk to. And that was the same thing I kept hearing about Giles. Same thing I kept hearing about Covington. Same thing I kept hearing about Jones Jr. Just good, happy, quiet, just fun people. And I was like, when things start to suck, those are the kind of things that matter, because it makes the team a little less fun to cover, or a little more fun to cover.
And to alleviate some of your concerns, he can be an a-hole on the court. Like,
wonderful.
He has a nasty streak. Like, he gets competitive.
Good.
He fired up. He'll talk some trash. Like he's all about that. Like he has no problem being a little nasty on the floor with, as far as the competitive side goes.
I want some nasty. I always want some nasty. And
Yeah.
I want guys who want to, like, Trevor Ariza and the Rudy Fernandez thing literally a decade ago still was one of those things I was like, I don't know if I can take him here. But then he kind of just started messing with guys, and I'm like, nah, you're just a traditional a-hole, and I love you. Like, it was just one of those things. It was like, I read the piece from Kenyon Martin a couple days ago where he was talking about all the Europeans and the reason they can play in the league today is because they can't beat the hell out of them. And it kind of made me miss the days of the NBA enforcers. Not that I'm looking to hurt somebody, but just somebody who's looking to lay some lumber every now and then, or twist somebody up, or get underneath somebody's skin. Like, there's levels to it. Like, Draymond pulled back his stupidity, kicking dudes in the junk, and just started screwing with dudes, which I fully endorse. And then you've got, like, Patrick Beverley, who's a dirty SOB who takes guys' knees out. And as much as I hate Russ, like, I would back Russ in that head-to-head every day because there's levels to being an a-hole, right?
I mean, there's definitely levels to being an a-hole. I rolled my eyes pretty hard at the Kenyon Martin thing because it's like, I'm sorry, do Steven Adams screams not exist? Because that dude will lay people out. Like, I mean, it's like, I get tired of people pretending that the NBA is
don't get me wrong. The league is still physical.
I'm not saying you.
Yeah. No, but I think there is a finer point in that as far as, like, there aren't enough.
Throw fewer punches. Yes.
That, and I think there's a little bit less goonery. And I'm not talking about, like, the cheap fouls. I'm talking about, catching guys with a back screen that they don't see coming. Now, Steven Adams will do that no matter what. I believe it was Dame who caught it and got whiplash. And somebody asked him a question about it after a game. It might have been in game. And somebody said it was dirty or something like that. And he's like, talk to your teammate, mate. It was like, yeah, he's not wrong. Sorry, dude. Yeah. You just got crushed by literally the strongest guy in the league. That's, it happens. I got a couple questions that we kind of all tied in there. So thank you to everybody who did send in questions. I didn't get you all worked in because I'm terrible about actually, like, reading off the questions until, like, the very end, because somebody will say something and I go squirrel and we start running with it. So with that, thanks for joining us, man. Any parting Harry Giles wisdom you want to give us?
Just please take care of our large adult son. He's going to be in Sacramento. Kings fans will definitely be rooting for him. So it's going to be bittersweet when we see him in a Blazers jersey, but
you'll see him very soon.
Yeah, opening a preseason against you guys. But I mean, I feel comfortable speaking for the majority of Kings fans when I say that everyone's rooting for him still. Like, even though he's not wearing a Kings jersey, he's one of those guys that Kings fans are always going to,
he's that dude.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is understandable. All right, man, this is the part of the show where you get to plug anything and everything you want.
Biggest thing is just kingsherald.com. We're an independent Kings website. We run it for ourselves, by ourselves, and it's just for Kings fans. And we try to be informative and educational and occasionally funny. And kingsherald.com.
And just try to subside through all the madness that is Kings basketball.
I mean, it's fun for an outsider to come in and just kind of see what's happening amongst Kings fans, because, like, every day is a new twist and turn. So
I have to tell everybody this, like, probably once a week I just DM you with just, like, sad news. It's just like, it's usually something along the lines of, please explain this.
Every so often it's just, hey, let me twist this knife.
Mostly because it rolls downhill. Like, that's how this works, because there's stuff here that I just shake my head, roll my shoulders, like, why? What are we doing here? Mostly.
And I'm already dead inside. So
see, I know you could commiserate on that level. So, all right, at GWIS on Twitter, at GWISS. Greg, man, thank you for joining us. And thank you, everybody else, for listening. This is a shorter episode because we have more content coming out, and I'm going to start doing more stuff like this, a little bit shorter, probably better for your work drive, that not that hour and a half long podcast you usually get from me. But like, rate, review, subscribe. iTunes, not iPod, good Lord. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere else you get your podcast, like, rate, review, subscribe. Do the same thing on all of the social media, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the things. Again, thanks again to everybody who came out for the live show. Same for Nikias' video that we did last week, and we'll have more and more content. Until then, guys, thank you very much. Catch you next week. Bye.